This is Drive Time Live with Mark Hahn on AM 1360, FM 94.9 KSEJ.
It's just about 14 after the hour, and Dr. Tracy Wilen joins me right here on Drive Time Live. Dr. Wilen, I've had on many occasions, and matter of fact, you were here last year in a seminar that you put on at the Marina over in South Sioux City.
That's true, and thank you very much for having me on again.
Oh, you're very welcome. So we're going to have to watch out for Z Women. Z Women are coming.
Yes, that's right. You know, March is Women's History Month, and we spend a lot of time this month celebrating some of the historic things that women have done. But I'm looking forward to see what history women will create. And Generation Z is the next generation of women coming up after millennials, which is Generation Y.
Not to be taken for granted. You got to keep an eye out because the women are on the march. And let's talk about Z. What's the Z have to do? Z women are coming. You're talking about, we've gone through generations X, Y, now we're on Generation Z?
That's right. So Generation Z is the group of individuals they estimate born in 1995 or later. So they'll be around age 20 or younger, maybe to 21 this year. They'll be in high school. They'll be in college. Some will be working, and some will even be voting. So it's a large group. It's about 26% of the population, estimated to grow to about 40% by 2020. And they have a lot of commonalities. Generations are really evaluated not so much on age, but on things that they have in common, they shared in experiences. For example, they've gone through recession, or they've gone through multiculturalism, or cyber attacks, or, privacy issues, or immersive technology. So that's how they're grouped.
These young women are going to be a force to be reckoned with for a while here. But I didn't know that March is Women's Month, basically.
Yes, it actually has a very interesting history because it goes back to California, where I live, and it was initiated, first as a day, and then it had some momentum and moved into a week, and now it's more global, and it's a month, and then there's International Women's Day. So it's just a time where, you'll see a lot of people doing events or programs like yours talking about the successes of women past, forward, and future forward.
Mm-hmm. So you have always been a big advocate of women. You have a blog that you do, and as I said, you were here just last year, as a matter of fact, speaking at the Marina Inn. It's all about empowering women, letting them discover the worth that they have.
Yes, and, I am fascinated with how each generation of men and women, but, because we're focused on women, really bring unique contributions to society and to workforce. And a lot of it is based on, how their lives have been shaped. And Generation Z will be no different. As we look at them, we see them as being more self-directed than other generations, entrepreneurial, pragmatic, and technical. And I think these young women today will bring a new set of skills and opportunities for future generations. And that to me is exciting.
You would say that the Generation Z or Z women of this generation are more technically savvy than what they were 10, 20 years ago.
Yes, in fact, I give an example of just how Generation Z will compare to millennials, which is our Generation Y. So, for example, millennials grew up on 2 screens, computer-wise, but Generation Z has 5 screens when you think about it. They have phones, they have laptops, they have tablets, they have TV, so they have many more. The Generation Y was texting and using their thumbs, where Generation Z is the swiping, generation. The millennials were playing online gaming, globally, but Generation Z now is into immersive gaming and augmented virtual reality. And just even something as simple as cash. I don't think this generation even understands what physical cash is, because they've grown up on gift cards and now mobile pay, like, Apple Pay and PayPal. So it's very different, even just looking at the technology of what they're used to, that they will bring to the workforce, than previous generations.
Now, there's Generation Z for the women. You note that they're more independent. How so? I mean, women's rights has been something that I knew I grew up with over the generations with the Gloria Steinem years. But how are they more independent now?
Because, this generation, I believe, will even understand that there were at one time ancient history gender roles. So for example, I had a young Generation Z boy actually wrote a book, and he said he had no concept of gender differences, and his parents asked him if he was bringing his little sister to his sports training, and he said no, and they started to read him the Riot Act, right, because he was being unfair to women, and he said, oh my God, I didn't think of it that way. I just thought that she's bigger than me and she's going to outperform me. So this generation doesn't even see gender as a differentiation because both parents are working. Both parents are doing chores. Both parents are cooking and cleaning. Both parents are participating in a variety of activities and sharing them, unlike in the past where it was more segmented to one role or the other. And my research actually, Mark, confirms that my research for women in leadership, which unfortunately didn't include Z because they're too young, but we saw each generation had less and less and less gender differentiation than the previous generations because roles was just not as important anymore.
Is that a bad thing, though, sometimes? I mean, because we still have to have what makes women tick, what makes women a little different than men. It's what was the book? Women are from Mars and men are from Venus?
Well, that's more of individualism, right, and being, individually important rather than roles. I'll just give you another example because my mother is from the silent generation, so she's older than the boomers. And growing up, she could never quite understand why I didn't like to cook or cook well, because in her mind, it was a gender attribute or characteristic. Cooking and female went together. Later on, she reads my stuff and she laughs because she realizes that cooking is a skill, and a man or a woman can be exceptional or not exceptional at that skill. It just depends if you like it or not. But her generation had these very strong orientations towards what women and men did, and it just didn't really exist anymore. As you know, there are many absolutely fantastic male chefs, and there's many absolutely fantastic female chefs. And even something as simple as hurricanes. I was reading that we actually have this unconscious bias, and we name the strong hurricanes with male names, and we name the weak hurricanes with female names. And it's just this unconscious bias that we have that strong is associated with man and weak is associated with women.
Yeah, well, anybody that names a strong hurricane after a man does not get the point that you don't want to make a woman angry because they don't let go. They don't. It's the truth. So talk about on these women. You say they don't understand the concept of cash, but how are they in the concept of saving, of being frugal, of maybe putting away for their retirement? When you talk about dealing with those things, because that is an independence, having that knowledge.
Yes, and in fact, there's been a bit of research about Generation Z when it comes to finances and their career planning, and they will be more thoughtful. And the reason that they anticipate this is because they have grown up with parents who have been in and out of work, unfortunately in different recession cycles, and they have observed their parents and seeing how hard it is if you don't have a job. At the same time, they have siblings who are millennials who went to school and got an education and couldn't get a job. And so this generation, what we're reading, is actually starting much younger and doing many different kinds of jobs and even starting businesses, in their teens and below. I just heard about a young girl who started her own business at age 10 out in St. Louis and was planning for it since age 7, which is phenomenal. So I think this generation is going to be much more frugal, savers, thoughtful about their jobs, and more inclined to actually start their own businesses.
Well, this transition's been happening for a while. Back in my day, of course, I went to an all-boys high school, but back in my day, when you heard about home ec, well, guys, the boys didn't take home ec. That was for the girls. You learn to cook and you learn to sew and domestic things. Nowadays, and it goes by a different title now in schools, but nowadays you find it crosses the genders. I mean, there are guys, young men that are involved in these types of classes, and I think it's important. You talked about cooking as independence. That would be true for a woman, too, because if she doesn't have to rely on somebody else to prepare meals or know how to cook, then that also, that gives her a little bit more independence.
Well, I would say this generation would say, Mark, okay, we're going to use on-demand food delivery. We're going to order it online and have it dropped off. We're going to use Instacart to send us our groceries, and we're going to use Uber to take us out to dinner. So I think this generation conceptually sees many more services at their fingertips at the swipe of an app than previous generations. But I think the one thing that I'm very positive about that's moving into the classroom is this whole makers movement, which is bringing science, technology, engineering, and math into the classroom in the form of tangible products, like making projects using technology for both boys and girls. And I view that as very positive, and I'm also hearing a lot of schools are requiring, moving forward at the very young grades, computer coding as another subject. You take math, you take science, you take English, and you take computer coding. So I think these are very strong skills that both boys and girls, men and women, should have, because they will be more prepared for the future and the future careers.
Dr. Tracy Wilen, my guest here on Drive Time Live. The Z Women are coming. March is Women's History Month. And how can they find out more about your blog? Maybe your website as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, everything is on my website, which is TracyWilen.com, which is TracyWilen.com. I am on Twitter at Tracy Wilen. I'm on Facebook as Dr. Tracy Wilen, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I think I'm pretty easy to find.
I believe that entirely. And, there's one thing, though, that hangs in the back of my mind. When you talk about these young women, this Generation Z, that have everything at their fingertips, everything is electronic. What happens if that all of a sudden went away? Would they be lost, or would they know how to manage without this?
This is so funny. Someone had just asked me that same exact question today, and I said, if we lost technology globally, we would be in chaos, because we depend, on so much technology, just whether it's in our cars, are really, software and, circuit designs now. So I don't think just this generation would be lost. I think all generations we would be in a disaster. However, your point is well taken. A pilot needs to learn how to do a manual landing and autopilot, and I think that's pretty important. So each, industry needs to factor in what do you really need to know in case, as you say, the technology goes awry.
All right, and give us the website one more time.
It's Tracy, Tracey, Wilen, Wilen.com.
Z Women are coming.
News, weather, sports, and more. It's Drive Time Live with Mark Hahn on KSCJ.